Former President Trump taking the stand. He was the only witness testifying today in the New York civil fraud trial. The judge saying he and his two sons inflated the value of his assets, but Trump has his own thoughts on the matter.
This is really election interference, and so this trial is ridiculous. The numbers are much greater than on the financial statement. And we've already proven that. They said Mar-a-Lago's worth $18 million. Mar-a-Lago's worth anywhere from probably 50 to 100 times more than that. And it's a terrible, terrible thing.
Trump maintained that his properties were undervalued on the financial statements because they didn't include his brand value, and said he had very little involvement with the preparation of those statements, which are at the heart of this case. But he did say he looked at them and would give his opinion on individual values if asked. The state attorney was trying to establish that Trump was responsible for knowing basic accounting principles, but Trump said he gave the accounting firm he hired all of the documents so they could apply those principles. Trump completed his testimony today, and the Trump legal team may call him back during the presentation of their side of the case. And joining us now to react to former President Trump's latest trial happening in New York, we have former President Trump's national security advisor, Kash Patel. Kash Patel, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me back on.
Of course, Kash. Former President Trump taking the stand today in the New York civil suit. Reports from the courtroom coming in saying things were fiery with the judge. Telling Trump's defense team to control their client. This all because the former president was giving longer than what he liked answers. What do you make of what's coming out of that Manhattan courtroom today?
Look, as a former federal public defender and national security prosecutor, there are things in court that happen once in a trial, one moment that you're just like, oh, the judge got that totally wrong or is completely inappropriate. And that's kind of to be expected. To call this judicial process a circus would be a compliment to this judge. He has preordained the outcome of this case. The attorney general in this case ran on convicting Donald Trump. That was her campaign promise, and called him an illegitimate president. These two have teamed up together, and now this judge is asking the defense to silence Donald Trump, who had the audacity to take the witness stand because the plaintiff in the case is asking a question that they want a preordained answer to given, and the judge is the enforcer on that system. That, to me, is an abject failure of justice and should show anyone who knows nothing about this case at all that when a prosecutor or plaintiff asks a witness a question, the law requires the witness to respond to the question with the truth, not with what the judge wants him to say.
You raise a lot of very important points, Kash. The judge, and the attorney general, both coming under heavy scrutiny for being essentially Democrat activists. So ultimately, when it comes to what's at stake here, the valuation, much of it, the valuation of these properties owned by the Trump Corporation, who will get the final say, and what might an appeal look like in a civil case like this?
Well, look, the whole purpose of this prosecution or case, just like the Colorado case and a few others, is to create the disinformation campaign narrative for the mainstream media to latch onto. And that is, oh, Donald Trump committed fraud, or Donald Trump should not be on the presidential ballot because of some legal fiction they've created. And all they want is the headline. Every one of these cases is getting appealed, and every single one of them is getting overturned, even in the case of New York. But we know these appeals process takes time, and what they want to do is put Donald Trump in court, make him spend millions of dollars, put his family through the worst case scenario, all the while he's campaigning for president and having to deal with a combative media who won't report truthfully. They'll just celebrate this false conviction and run with it as long as they possibly can. And that's their whole plan, get Trump.
You know, you're so right. Sadly, the headline always gets the most traction, and then the retraction is always buried on, page 20 at the back of the paper where nobody sees it. But, I guess another question, Trump's daughter, Ivanka, slated to take the stand on Wednesday, this after she's dropped an appeal to the judge's ruling requiring her testimony. What do you make of these developments?
Look, It's all part of this vindictive prosecutor's plan to get Trump, and getting Trump involves going after his children. It used to be when you're running for political office, your family, especially your children, were off limits. But remember, there are no rules when it comes to Donald Trump anymore. It's just make up whatever rule works to get Trump. And if we have to put him into a case in New York City, we will do that. If we have to drag his kids in, we will do that. If we have to make up lies, we will do that. Having Mar-a-Lago valued at $18 million is like calling me a billionaire. It's an absolute joke. But they don't care because the media will come in and say that's what it's valued at. And Donald Trump therefore lied, and his children were somehow in on it. And they will have the disinformation campaign that they have been building for months and months and months. And the New York Times and CNN and MSNBC and ABC will all cover it. And half of the country will once again be misled into a cycle of an upcoming election year. And all that is just rigging elections. It's not just the court system. It's the media that is as guilty, if not worse, than the judge and prosecutor in this case.
I do want to follow up, Kash, on exactly that, targeting the election. It looks like the case is not only targeting Trump, but now his family members as well. So from your perspective, how big of an impact will this case pose on not only the Trump family and the business, but ultimately the 2024 election?
Well, having personally knowing all of them and currently working for President Trump as a senior advisor for national security, I don't think it impacts them one bit. I think their business will probably see a boon from this. I think if you go to a Trump property, whether it's in Florida or New York or Scotland or Ireland, you will see the value for yourself. And that is why people travel across the world to stay at his hotels, to play at his golf courses, to attend his dinner clubs, etc. So while the mainstream media will have their quote unquote victory, if in the headlines, I think the reality is that these cases collectively, New York, Colorado, D.C., Florida, Georgia, are all showing Americans that this justice system has been destroyed. There is a two-tier system of justice that has been created to provide an alternate reality to rig presidential elections. And to me, that civics lesson is more important than anything we could have ever taught the American people. I just hope we can get the messaging out on the truth to enough of them.
Kash Patel, really appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great day.
Former President Trump now leading President Biden in key battleground states. What states are they, and what does this new polling mean for the 2024 race? Joining us for more is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. Good evening, Iris. So what are these polls telling us?
Good evening to you as well. So a new poll by the New York Times shows that former President Trump is actually leading President Biden in 5 out of 6 most important battleground states for 2024. Specifically, Trump's leading in Nevada, Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, all of which President Biden won back in 2020. In addition, a new CBS News poll shows that more voters think that they will be better off financially if Trump wins in 2024, and that more voters also think that it's Trump who's more likely to keep the U.S. out of a war overseas. And overall, the CBS News poll shows that Trump at 51%, while Biden trailing at 48% among likely voters nationwide. Meanwhile, President Biden's campaign responded to these polls by saying that these predictions are way too early and that Biden's campaign can win by, quote, putting their heads down and doing the work. Meanwhile, President Biden today touting investments under Bidenomics in Delaware. Watch.
16 with a B, $billion here in the Northeast corridor. 25 different projects, all to build the Northeast corridor from Boston to Washington. It's part of my agenda to invest in America.
The Biden administration has been touting what it calls good economic news under Bidenomics when it comes to lowering inflation and job numbers, etc. But of course, now with national polling continuing to show a lack of confidence in President Biden's handling of the economy, it remains unclear how much of this Bidenomics push by the White House is working. Steve.
So, Iris, definitely some concerning signs for President Biden's campaign here, but given how close of a race we're seeing between Biden and Trump in a potential general matchup, why are these particular swing states getting so much attention right now?
So these states can really determine the final outcomes here. For example, back in 2020, Biden's victories in key states like Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, all of which that former President Trump won back in 2016, these were vital to President Biden's victory in 2020. So now as President Biden seeks to win, of course, re-election, he really needs to get many of these states back. But now, of course, we're seeing that polling shows that Trump could be back ahead. Steve.
NTD's Iris Tao reporting from the White House. Iris, thank you. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.